First, before I introduce the next group, I just do want to remind you that this entire session, all of today, is being recorded for statewide broadcast on TVMT, TV Montana. It's on MHS Internet, and it'll be stored in the state archives over at the Montana Historical Society. So you are here for posterity. A year ago, at the Greater Montana Foundation annual board meeting, several trustees championed the idea of garnering oral histories from among the many great but aging Montana broadcasters before they died. Some are already gone. Icons like Ed Craney, Chet Huntley, Shag Miller, Don Bradley, Vi Thompson, Bill Holter, and that list unfortunately goes on and on. But others are still with us and can illuminate Montana's broadcasting legacy. Board member Monty Wallace took up the challenge to get a professional video and oral history project underway, and with his committee is well begun. So here to talk about it, 3 GMF board members and a legacy member involved in the project. I'm going to introduce them one by one, and once again, if you would just kind of raise your hand for the camera. First, Norma Ashby is a Helena native and a University of Montana journalism graduate. Norma was a broadcaster at KRTV in Great Falls from 1962 to 1988. In that 26-year broadcasting career at KRTV, she hosted and produced the award-winning Today in Montana show for more than 2 decades, received the MBA's Broadcaster of the Year award in 1985, and later wrote a book about her on-air experiences. Over the years, she's also produced nearly 24 documentaries on issues of interest to all Montanans. Norma continues to contribute today to a number of philanthropic and community agencies, and among many honors is a Montana Broadcasting Hall of Famer, U of M Distinguished Alumni, has been formally recognized as the most influential woman in Great Falls, and last year was lauded by Humanities Montana as a humanities hero. Dan Snyder began his broadcasting career in 1948 while attending the University of Montana in Missoula, working as a part-time radio announcer for KGVO, and after graduation worked in broadcasting in Bozeman and Great Falls. In 1955, he started KBGF, Great Falls' 4th radio station, and leapt into television in 1958 when he began operations of the city's 2nd TV station, KRTV. In 1962, he and another investor bought a TV station in Billings, changing its call letters to KULR. Dan has been involved with many other business enterprises across his career, including remodeling Great Falls' old Milwaukee Depot and helping to build the Village Bank in the Holiday Village shopping center there. He's also managed radio properties, produced trade shows, owned a flower shop, and God knows what else. Among many, many community roles, Dan is also a former head of the Montana Broadcasters Association, is in the Montana Broadcasters Hall of Fame, and a long-serving member of the Greater Montana Foundation. He describes himself as semi-retired. A veteran Montana broadcaster, Monty Wallace, is among the newest Greater Montana Foundation trustees. He was elected to the board in 2010, soon after he retired from his position as president and general manager of Billings TV KTVQ. During his stint as that station's president, he was also charged by Cordillera Communications, the parent company that owns about a dozen TV stations across the U.S., to oversee operations for the corporation's 6 Montana stations and serve as a corporation vice president. Monty has previous experience in TV sales and an additional 23 years working in radio broadcasting in Billings. He has chaired the board of the Montana Broadcasters Association. He's been honored by that association with an EB Award for Outstanding Television Community Service and graces the Montana Broadcasters Hall of Fame. Along with all that, for close to 2 decades now, Monty has also served as a reserve deputy with the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department and has received its highest commendation, the Award of Merit, for his role in evacuating Billings residents from a burning apartment building in 1997. And finally, we're delighted that Dave Wilson from Great Falls joins the panel. One of our broadcasting legacy interviewees, Dave has spent, about 50 years inside a radio booth, broadcasting to listeners across the Big Sky, and now to audiences literally worldwide, because about a year ago, eschewing retirement, he launched his own live streaming classic country radio station online. You can get him from Algeria to Zimbabwe and all places in between, and they do. You can listen too by going on the web to davewilsoncountry.com. You owe me the $5 for the plug. Meanwhile, back in Great Falls, Dave is a well-known, much-in-demand master of ceremonies at community events, and his voice is ubiquitous on many radio and TV commercials. Welcome to all of you, and Norma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Randy. You've done a great job as our introducer today, and thanks all of you for being here this morning. I want to thank the Greater Montana Foundation, along with the Montana Historical Society, for helping put this symposium together, and it's certainly our honor to be here. And I am so humbled to be on the same podium with these three auspicious gentlemen. When you count up the years that we have all been a part of this industry, it's over 190 years. So I think we should know what we're talking about. But we're going to have to go some to beat that last panel. Vic Miller threw me a real loop. I had no clue you were that funny. I had no clue. I mean it.
You should work with him.
I should work with him, Monty said. Okay. I did want to make a comment about our Chief Justice Lee Metcalf, a former United States Senator, as well as we sit in this beautiful former Supreme Court chambers. I knew him very well as a little kid growing up here in Helena. I knew his wife very well, Donna. When my TV show celebrated its 15th anniversary, I got a great note from them, and they said to me, "We knew you'd be successful because you were the little girl in Donna's Bluebird group that talked all the time." So that's kind of a left-handed comment, and Bill, I never saw him mad, so apparently I was lucky there. At any rate, we're going to talk today about this great project, the Broadcast Legacy Project, and it's just been our honor to be involved. So I'm going to start with Monty and have him give a little bit of information about this and what we hope to accomplish with it. Monty?
Thank you, Norma. A little while ago, I was talking to somebody out in the hallway, and they said, "Now, are you on the geezer portion of this event?" And I said, "Yes, I am." It was about a year ago that we were having our Greater Montana Foundation meeting, and Randy Morgan came up with an idea. It was you. You've got to take. It was Ron Davis too. Yeah, I mean there were several people involved, but the idea was to find a way to salute the legacy broadcasters of Montana, the people that we've watched on television, heard on the radio over the years, the people that were an integral part of broadcasting throughout the early years and even into the present time. And these are the people that, in many ways, established what broadcasting in Montana is today. The localism part of radio and television, the community service part of this particular business, the local news that's so important to people in every city and every corner of the state, the public service announcements, the millions of dollars in public service announcements that are given away by radio and television stations throughout the state. And why do they do that? Return on investment, because people want to know what's going on in their community, and in turn, when they like a station, when they like a radio personality or a television personality, they're willing to invest in that particular station and listen and watch that station, and if they're a local merchant, even maybe spend $1 or $2 with that particular station. But the purpose of the Legacy Project is to find a way to salute these great broadcasters while we still have them with us. And I believe we've mentioned a little bit that we've already lost some of the great people that really made history in broadcasting in this state. And we would like to preserve their legacy before the rest of them are no longer with us. So I was charged with putting together a way to actually find a way to bring some recognition to them, to get some interviews done, and to salute them. First thing I thought about was, let's do 30-minute videos. And we tossed about, how can you say in 30 minutes what these people have done in decades? Well, there has to be a limit, and 30 minutes seemed to be it. So we put together a format. Norma was an integral part of all of this. So was Vic Miller. We put together the format for the interviews, and then we decided the toughest part of this whole thing is to be able to come up with a priority list of these great people that we need to interview. And let me list the names of the people that are going to be part of this project and be the interviewees. Mr. Dan Snyder, Jerry Black, Vic Miller, Norma Ashby, Stan Stevens, Joe Sample. And Joe, by the way, originally said no, but we're going to find a way to get that interview anyway. We don't take no for an answer. George Ostrom, Cato the Cat Butler, Lonnie Bell, Dan Miller, Ron Cass, and most of that interview will probably have to be really well edited. Bob Merrill, Stan Whitman, Conrad Burns, Dave Wilson, Terry Bass, Jerry Puffer, and Bill Whitsitt. Those are the priority list of broadcasters that will be interviewed on the Legacy Project. We've already conducted 6, I believe, interviews, and the remainder will be done over the next couple of months. Interestingly enough, we were able to get all the recording of this done at no charge because the cost to do these interviews is rather substantial. And I want to thank John Saunders at Cordillera Communication for coming forward, stepping up and said, you bet we'll provide the studio time, the editing time, and we'll make this happen for you at no charge. And we very much appreciate Cordillera and MTN for doing that.
Okay. Thank you, Monty. I just wanted to ask Dan, you notice as that list went on, there was an age list here. And so did you want to mention the age that we're looking at?
You could get a little squirmish when you start talking about age, or you could just relax.
Which is it going to be?
Yeah, I've been warned a couple of times that Norma says we're talking about people over 65, and then Randy talked about aging broadcasters, and so that brought to mind my favorite expression. Old broadcasters don't die, they just lose their frequency.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. I got to work with him all that time. He's the guy that hired me. And Dave Wilson, as an interviewee, do you want to comment on what being a part of this project has meant to you as an interviewee and as a very well-known broadcaster yourself? How did you feel when you were called and said, you're going to be part of this project?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Greater Montana Foundation for including me in this project. And what it meant to me, I look around the room here, even at the board that we have here, and I think to myself, with all of today's technology, they have yet to find a way to download the brain. And you know, that's got to be the next best thing, because there are so many memories, so much knowledge, and one day they will be able to do that. And it's always been to me one of the great shortcomings of being in broadcasting was the fact that once you're gone, you're gone. And people say, remember old so-and-so? Oh, yeah, I remember him. What was that thing he used to do? Boy, I've forgotten now, but well, this is going to allow that legacy to live.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm forever grateful.
Thank you, Dave. We're just going to show you a couple of short excerpts now of what we've been doing. And I know Kirby's going to plug it in for us. This first little short excerpt is with Jerry Puffer, a 52-year veteran in radio with KSCN Radio up in Shelby. And so, we ready to go? Kirby will watch Jerry Puffer. And I think I asked him about embarrassing moments. There he is.
And did the station identification on the religious shows in the mornings. Gamers Bread used to hour, and it was basically, it's 9 o'clock, Gamers Bread time to enjoy a loaf of Gamers and everything. So I miss doing that, you know, and started the show. And I realized.
Oh, no.
Please stand by. We're having technical difficulties.
And I started sweating bullets. Because, you know, I was 16, you know, I was a kid, and not a very smart kid from high school. So I'm sitting there sweating bullets, looking at the program log. I see that. So finally, about 9:14, I made the decision. I just cut the religious program and give the time check. So right in the middle of the sermon, I faded the pod down, said it's 9:15, Gamers, good for you, and then joined the program. So that was embarrassing. And then remember the old 4B's cafeteria?
Sure.
I started doing live commercials, and one of the words in there. And then I remember I did a clock jewelry commercial, and they had a self-winding clock, and I call it a self-winding clock. I did it all, Norman. I said for in the news.
Yeah.
And get this, I'll show you how slow I was. So I'm doing these live commercials, so I don't know, a month into it or something, Don Robinson, the program director, Robbie, was back in the days of reel-to-reel tape. He said, I'm going to do the commercials, put them on tape, and then you just play them. So he'd do the commercials. He'd say, you're listening to KMON's junior announcer, Jerry, they're open on Sundays. You get down, he'd say, now back to our junior announcer, Jerry Puffer. So I thought that was great, you know, because I heard my name, Don. So and it dawned on me, I think it was 47 years later, station explaining that, you know, we got a kid on that's not very good. Yeah.
Okay, and then, pardon me? You couldn't hear it? Okay, why don't we not show the next one then if you can't hear? That's okay. We'll just stop. I don't know, for whatever reason, these aren't playing better, but anyway, this just shows that Randy Morger did interview me, and we had a lot of fun, and I do thank Randy. But if you can't hear him in this room, we won't take the time, okay? I think the big question you want to know is what's going to happen to these interviews now? And so, Monty, do you want to address that?
Well, certainly we want these archived for as long as we can, and graciously, the Montana Historical Society, through Bruce Wittenberg, has agreed to archive them at the Historical Society. We've also, I hope, now found a way to put these half-hour interviews online, and very soon, probably within the next 30 days, as we add these interviews to the website, you'll be able to go to the Greater Montana Foundation website and hopefully to the Montana Historical website and be able to access the interviews and bios of each of these individuals.
And what about the MTN possibility?
Yes, John Saunders has also asked if it would be possible to air these on the MTN stations, and the board took about 3 seconds and decided that was a good idea. And hopefully Linda Gray might do the same on her stations. How's that for being put on the spot?
Good.
Thank you.
Well, as you can imagine, one of the best parts of these interviews is the funny moments in the early days of our careers. And I don't think anybody had more funny moments than my former boss, Dan Snyder, in the very earliest days of KRTV, which is only the second station in Great Falls. I think it went on the air in '58. And one of the things that they did to fill time was to play the world's worst movies that he got very cheap. And he also loved to put all the commercials first so that there weren't any interruptions for the movies. So I wonder if you want to expand on that subject a little bit, Dan.
I had, unfortunately, to have to start out as an independent because after I built the first station, it was only 600 watts, and CBS, NBC, and ABC weren't interested in me. They wrote me letters saying, you need more power and a bigger stick. So I bought a lot of film. And so what do I do that's different? Well, I put movies in prime time. And I would buy a package of movies, 50 at a time. And of the 50, there would be a top 10, which would be good box office ones. There would be the middle ones, which were pretty good shows. And then there was the bottom 10, absolute dogs. So I thought, I can't play these in prime time. So at midnight on Friday night, I featured it as the world's worst movies. And they were pretty bad. And I knew that they wouldn't command a big audience, so I said at the beginning, because I hosted it, I said at the beginning, we're going to do the commercials first, because the movies are so bad, you don't want to see them. And so, my friend Don Bradley and I would do the commercials live, one right after another. And I was on top of some mattresses doing a mattress commercial, and I got over-exuberant and fell off. Another time I was demonstrating a power mower and how easy it was to operate it, and it took off, and I ran into a typewriter table and knocked it off and fell off the lawnmower. Now, Bradley and I then played the movie, and we were so thankful that 3 o'clock came along and we could go home. And the telephone rang. Hello? Yeah, you gonna play another one? I said, you don't want another one of those bad things. He says, it was pretty good. I'd like to see another one.
Oh, gosh.
And on Saturday night, we did shock theater. Now, in those days, they were all Frankenstein, Wolfman, and Bela Lugosi, you know, and oh, man. Well, at any rate, of course, being the ham that I am, I decided I was going to host it too. So I had my dentist make me fangs that I could put onto my teeth. And I didn't have a mustache then. And whitened my face, and I got a cape and everything, and I really looked the part. But I had to, I envisioned that I would come out of a casket. And so my cameraman, we started off on a miniature scene of a cemetery with dry ice creating smoke coming up, and then it would switch from that to the inside of a mausoleum. And I had to find a casket, so I went to all of the undertakers in Great Falls looking for a casket. And I started with the top one at Croxford's, and good Lord, you know how expensive a casket is? I had no idea. You know, I'm 32 years old. I'm not thinking about dying or burying anyone. But at any rate, they were too expensive. Well, to make a long story short, I went to the fourth and last one, and I said, do you have another room that you don't have any expensive? No, we don't. I said, do you have any used caskets? And I finally opened up and had to tell him what I wanted it for. He says, oh, and he gave me the address of a casket company in Butte that made pine caskets, and pretty good. I bought a casket for $75. And I managed to come out of it all right. Good evening. Welcome to Shock Theater.
Oh, it was great. Thank you, Dan. And Dave, you had the experience of meeting some of the great country western singers, and I know there's a long list that you could name, but I think you told me that in your early years that your opportunity with Ray Price was a memorable one.
Oh, I'll tell you, that man, number one, being such a legend in country music, and actually, at one point in time, changed the face of country music. Yeah, well, then if that wasn't enough, he turned around a few years later, did it again, and in spite of being hung in effigy in New York City for recording for the good times, his legacy was just something else. He came to Great Falls, and he was going to appear at the fair. Well, the local fair manager called me, and he says, Dave, would you like to interview Ray Price? Oh, my goodness, yes. He says, well, now one thing, a hair-triggered temper. You say the wrong thing, he'll get up and walk out on you. Now, understand, I had been on radio, 6 or 7 months at the time, maybe. So I go home, change clothes, put on my best, go back down to the station. I'm pacing. All of a sudden, I look up, and here come these two cowboys. One's got his hair all down his face. And I thought, man, I don't need this. I said, can I help you guys? And the one looked up and said, yeah, I'm Ray Price. Oh, okay. Well, thank goodness we taped those interviews back then. So I took him into the production room, and we sit down and we get to going. But this interview, particularly being my very first major country music star interview, is going great. I mean, I am on a roll, folks. And I got above my raisin, is what I did. Because as we're interacting back and forth, I turned to him and I said, Mr. Price, looking back on your career and at the songs you've recorded, my goodness, Crazy Arms, Heartaches by the Number, same old me. And I just stopped. And I was sitting there with my mouth hanging open, and he said, Dave, what's wrong? I said, good God, do you know who you are? You're Ray Price. Well, Ray Price, being the gracious individual that he was, and the consummate professional, just reached over and shut off the tape recorder, and he said, Dave, I'm the same guy we started talking with a few minutes ago. Back that thing up and let's do this again.
That's a precious story, Dave. Thank you. And Monty, what about you? When I think of you as a manager, because you've been in management since you were 21. But in the middle, I know you did a lot of other kind of jobs. So were there fun experiences along the way, like herding cats and that kind of thing?
No. Actually, a lot of great things happened in radio in the early years. I signed on Coin Radio for many years at 6 a.m. every morning. And before you would go on the air, you would call the Weather Bureau to get the forecast. And as every morning you made that call, and you'd call the recorded Weather Bureau and get the forecast information. Well, this particular morning, nothing was going right. Came in and, I couldn't get the coffee pot to work, and, the toilet was overflowing, and there were miscellaneous other problems. And my usual time, 5 minutes to 6, I tried to get a hold of the Weather Bureau. Well, the line was busy. So I kept calling and calling and calling, and finally it's 1 minute to 6. And tried one more time. Called the Weather Bureau, dialed the number, busy signal. And I was in a terrible mood that morning and let out with the biggest string of bad words that I had done in many years. I looked down and happened to notice that the microphone was on.
Oh.
Oh, man.
About 20 minutes later, I got a call from a nice lady, and she said, "I want to thank you." And I said, "Well, why?" And she said, "That was the funniest damn thing I've ever heard on radio." Then there was my buddy Lonnie Bell, and Lonnie signed on Coin Radio for many years, and every morning at 5 minutes after 7, his favorite saying was, "Hey, hey, hey, let's slide along." Unfortunately, he always did it right after a Preparation H commercial. And after that, really nothing funny happened in management. So.
Well, I do want to share a story from my 26,000 interviews that I did when I had Today in Montana, and a lot of you are familiar with this story if you read my book, Movie Stars and Rattlesnakes. But everybody always says, well, what's your most memorable interview? And of course, it was Cyril Kolarchik, the rattlesnake handler from Rainsford, Montana. And I don't know about you, how many in this room like rattlesnakes? Is anybody in this room, or anybody in this room afraid of rattlesnakes? Okay, well, I'm one of the persons that are afraid of rattlesnakes. And anyway, this gentleman came and he called me up and he said, I'm a rattlesnake handler and I'd love to bring my snake to your show. And I said, well, that'd probably be pretty interesting. So he brought it. We were taping it. So he brings his rattlesnake into the studio and he lets it slide around the floor and he teases it with a long stick with a ball in the end, and it strikes at the ball. And then he picks it up from behind the head. He brings it right up to my poor camera girl, Susie, and she's looking right down the mouth of this snake. And then the climax came when he put it down on the floor, put his foot on its head, took out a pocket knife, went and slaughtered it right on the show. And 13 baby rattlesnakes spilled out onto the floor.
Oh my God.
And, I was paid to talk. I couldn't say a word. And so somebody in the studio grabbed a shovel and scooped up those rattlesnakes and the babies and flew out the door and buried them because they're poisonous too. And then he skinned the snake. He gave the skin to my camera girl, who later made a hat band out of it. And then he cut off the rattles and put them on my hand. And they were still moving. So that was my most memorable guest. And at the conclusion of that show, I had these kind of calls. Viewers called, and one said, we're going to report you to the Association for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And the other person called and said, that's the best show you ever did. Why don't you dress out a deer sometime? So those are the kinds of things. And in the very earliest days, when Dan hired me, people were talking about their beginnings in the business. I had never been on TV, and I had a background in journalism, graduated from the School of Journalism, Missoula, and I'd worked in print and sales and PR and magazine, but never in television. And so I had come back to Great Falls because of the illness of my sister, and somebody said there was an opening at KRTV. So I went up. And do you want to tell the story?
No, I won't tell the whole story. I will just say it's about 15 seconds before we're ready to go on the air. And we're sitting side by side on the set. And I said to Norma, are you ready? She looked over at me, and I didn't see fear in her eyes. I saw stark terror.
And so then I said to him, are there any tips you can give me or what you should or shouldn't do on TV? He said, yes, there are just 2 things to remember. And if you remember these 2 things, you'll go far in broadcasting. I said, oh, what are they? And he said, number 1 is don't swear. And number 2, don't pick your nose on the air.
Well, the stark terror went out of her expression. Her eyes lit up, she smiled, took off, and she never looked back.
Well, I was laughing like mad when he told me that, and that's true. But I was laughing gaily, I thought, oh, I found my place. Well, then I get these calls saying, can't stand your laugh, and what's worse, you're making Dan laugh the way you laugh. And so then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make it in this business. So I quit laughing, and then I get these calls, are you ill? Why aren't you laughing? So I learned a very good lesson that has kept me going all my life, and that is no matter how good you are, what you do or what you don't do, you're never going to please everybody. So just, if they don't like you, the best sensor is right at the end of your arm. So, at any rate. Your record, Dan, of the employees, he set such a tone at KRTV for all the people that work for him that we still have a group of us, the original employees, that get together and celebrate. And we all tell the same stories over and over and over. We never get tired of them. Do you have something like that going on in Billings, Monty, with your friends in the business that you get a kick out? I mean, when you get together with Vic, do you keep telling the same stories to each other and laughing?
We have a lot of Jay Cohn stories that I can't tell you. But yeah, I mean, the great thing about this business is the people, and the people that you work with, all shapes, all sizes, all different senses of humor, all different ways of expressing themselves. And really, that's what I miss the most, retiring at the beginning of 2010, is the camaraderie of the people. I don't miss the bottom line problems, and I don't miss the corporate politics, and I don't miss all the other stuff that goes along with the job, but I do miss the people, because it really is a people business. And in many ways, what you see on the air, what you hear on the air, that's the way these people are, and some great folks.
Right. I think we should talk a little bit about the change in the business since we all started, because we really were a part of an era that was so fun before it got so big and so diverse. I mean, when we started, there were only 2 stations on the air, and it was black and white. There was no cable, no satellite, anything like that. Maybe, Dave, you saw a huge amount of change in the radio business from all the tape decks and the record players, and now it's all digitized. Do you want to comment on that?
I can still recall, as most of you probably can, the very first broadcast booth you worked from. And the amount of equipment in there. I remember I had a tape deck up on my left. I had a triple stack cart deck in front of me, 2 turntables below the tape deck, the board itself with a never or seldom used cassette player, and then another tape recorder on this side and another turntable here. And we went from all that and being able to change records and cue up records and slip cue and all the rest of it, to all of a sudden it's one of these and a mouse. You've got 2 computer screens. Over here is your commercials and the bits you're going to do, and over here is your music, and that's it. You know, the thing I miss most, I guess, as you're saying, is the people, because I don't care who you worked with, there was always something you could pick up from somebody, and I always worked under the impression that if it was worth listening to, it was worth stealing. So.
Do you want to comment on the equipment too, Dan, and what you had to see in the changes?
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to get serious. When I filed for my first radio station in 1955, and I applied for the license, I knew in advance that you had to comply with all of the rules and regulations that were in effect at the time. In order to operate a radio station, you had to be in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. There was also the fairness doctrine, and you had to give equal time. And we all subscribed to that. I did, and so did my friend Ed Craney when he started his station. And so I did, and I complied. And almost the same thing with television. But there are 2 things in the communication business that have, I think, been a disservice. One is Judge Green and Pennsylvania's ruling, the breakup of AT&T. The second one, and even more critical to the broadcast industry, was deregulation. The fairness doctrine went out the window, and there was no such thing as equal time anymore. And so the programming changed on both radio and television. And So you have people now who command big audiences, and they give all kinds of opinion, and you listen to it, and they don't give equal time for the other side of the question. So I think that's hurt broadcasting. Now, the other thing that I think is serious is somehow or other, television has become more entertainment, this has been said before, more entertainment-oriented than news. Television can and does do periodically great news stuff, and satellite television has changed that. But we now have sound bites, and it's kind of disappointing. And when big corporations took over all of the little stations, somehow or other they lost their interest in the local community and what was happening. So, there's a bright light in all of that, and the bright light is PBS. I'm really concerned about cutting the budget of PBS, and you've read the stories. I've made a lot of money in the television business, and I was proud of it, and I was proud of the things that I did. But I'm disappointed in that it isn't quite what I wanted. I have to say that I've spent more time with public television and public radio because of what they do and how they do it. And, some great things. The Bakken boom is a classic example of what the university produced and won top prizes. And there are a lot of others. The Night of the Grizzlies. Backroads of Montana is probably one of the best programs on the air, and William Marcus is admirable. He's so talented, and he's so easygoing, and you just want to love the guy.
Yeah. Okay, Dan. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan, for your commentary. And what about you, Monty? Would you have anything to add to what he's just said as a longtime person in this business?
Well, certainly the technological changes have been huge, especially over the last few years with satellite. And, I remember watching television back when I was just a kid. I remember when Cook Television went on the air, and I was one of the people watching the test pattern. 4 hours I watched that test pattern. But the changes in how the signal is delivered from analog to digital, certainly a huge change from black and white to color. High definition is just absolutely beautiful. What a great change. Stereo, something that we don't even talk about anymore, a huge change in the technical side. One of the things I've noticed, I guess, is the way radio has changed. And it used to be that news was a big part of every radio station. There'd be news at the top of the hour, there'd be news at the bottom of the hour. And local news was something that every station had a news director. Every station had a news person at least. Back then, the Intermountain Radio Network brought news, and Bud Iwan and the gang were a big part of that. UPI supplied news on the little teletype machine that we had in the back room, and we'd go in the back and rip and read, and away we went. But today, news is really not a big part of many radio stations, and I think that's a real loss to listeners and to communities, because when it comes right down to it, the voice of any community is the radio station and the television station and the newspaper that all provide that look at what's happening in that community. And in many ways, unfortunately, radio has veered away from that. Some stations have held the line and still do a great job with it, but certainly it's a cost factor. And in this day and age, when you have a bottom line and you have expenses, certainly one of the first things that gets cut in many cases, unfortunately, is news. So that's been a change that I don't think has been a good one, but as with everything is cyclical. And if it went down, it's going to come up. So I think we can look forward to good things.
And I do think, since 3 of us on this podium are all members of the Greater Montana Foundation Board, we can be very excited about the future of a lot of the new products that we are helping fund. And there are lots of exciting new ones, and I know Bill Witz is shaking his head, and we are looking more and more at alternative ways to get our messages out there. And there's so many creative people in Montana that we can all be excited and optimistic, and I'm sure Brody and Dolly Craney would nod their heads to that as well, and Sarah and all the rest of you who are in this room that are on the board. Yeah. So, are there any more tall tales you want to get in before we kind of wrap this up?
Well, I just want to recognize Bill Whitsitt for what he has become and what he has done. And also you, Norma. He's not here now, but Dewey Bruce is the new president of the Montana Broadcasters Association. And I just, these people, all I did was open the door to them. And everything that they did, they rose to the occasion. So thank you. I just have to say to you, Bill, I know you're retiring on the 17th of July. And my son, David, is retiring from his position in California at age 60. And, well, he's already retired. So I said to David, David, you're 60 years old, and I'm 86. You're retired, and I'm still working. What's wrong with this picture?
Well, we're excited to have Bill and Christy coming home. Christy's from Moore, Montana, and William Marcus even knew where that was. He knows where all the little towns in Montana are. But we're thrilled, and they have a beautiful home at Big Fork, and we're sure looking forward, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from Bill in the future. Do any of you have any questions before we wrap this up and get ready for lunch today? Hungry. I think we're all hungry. Well, I just want to, okay. I want to thank our panel, especially our dear Dave Wilson and his wife Cheryl, who came over this morning just to be with us today, and of course Dan Snyder and Monty Wallace, and you've been a great audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Norma, and thank all of you, and congratulations to you for the great work you've done and are doing to capture the incredible stories and the memories of the people who paved the way for Montana broadcasting today. So we have a small memento for you, and I'll get that to you as you dismount the podium there. And so to lunch. It's being served in the rotunda, so please go down, enjoy it, enjoy each other's company, and we will resume our business here at 1:15 this afternoon. We'll see you all downstairs.